Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back another video today, and today the New York Giants have released Daniel Jones, and their quarterback for 6 years is gone. No more of Daniel Jones. Was drafted in the first round, was the Eli Manning replacement, became a starter in 2019, kind of spent some time in 2019, splitting some time between him and Eli Manning and Eli's last year. And then in 2020, he became the full-time starter, but only started in 14 games. Would continue to have some injury problems over the first around 3-4 years of his career. And 6 years in New York, played 70 games, 69 starts, and in New York, the Giants went 24 and 44-1 under Daniel Jones, with their best season being in 2022 when the team went 9-6-1 and made it into the playoffs. Jones had an excellent wild card performance against the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins. Giants moved on to the divisional round and got their first playoff win in almost a decade. And got that win with Daniel Jones against the Vikings, and got to the division round against the Eagles, their division rival, and got blown out. So that was obviously pretty tough. But, you know, he had a great season in 2022. I mean, 2022, the team went 9-6-1. He threw 3,205 passing yards in 16 games, 15 passing touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, which is a career low in a season for Daniel Jones. So, look, I know Saquon Barkley and their defense was a big reason for their success, but let's not act like Daniel Jones had a great season in 2022 as well, and a great postseason, or a great wild card performance. So, yeah. All right. Now, this past year it's been rough. 10 starts this year, 2-8. The team is. He's thrown 216 for 341. Completion percentage is 63%, which is the third lowest of his career. 2,070 passing yards, 8 passing touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. So it's been tough for Daniel Jones. He's also been pretty decent in the running end. He's ran for almost 200 rushing yards this season. That was another thing I felt like I should say when talking about the year for Daniel Jones. He's been good on the rushing side, but that's kind of been an always for Daniel. But it has not been a good year at all. Now, where does Jones end up? I think that's the big question. To be honest with you guys, I was not expecting to talk about this. I did not expect Daniel Jones to get released today or ever. Or I'm not going to say or ever, but or by the end of the season. I honestly thought how the Giants would play this out is keep Daniel Jones the rest of the season, not play him at all, whether that's Tommy DeVito starting or Drew Lock taking over at some point, or freaking Tim Boyle, who's the quarterback 3 right now with Daniel Jones, before Daniel Jones was released. So who's the third quarterback in this Giants roster. So whether it's Tim Boyle or it's Tommy DeVito or it's Drew Lock, I expect the Giants to keep Daniel Jones on the roster till the end of the season and end up trying to make a move in the offseason, trying to trade him before free agency started, and trying to make something happen. You might be wondering, who's going to try to trade for Daniel Jones? I think there are a handful of teams that would like to bring in Daniel Jones as a backup or someone that they could potentially eye as a future starter by only giving up a 6th or 7th round pick for Daniel Jones. Now, I think the thing is I think if Daniel Jones if he didn't have that big contract, that huge contract that the Giants gave him, I think if he didn't have a huge contract, he had I'm not going to say a small contract, but he didn't have a absolutely overpaid contract, just a solid contract, not as much as he's making, then I think most likely the Giants probably would have kept him on the roster until the end of the season, try to trade him, because I think they would have been able to make a trade work out. But the sole reason of teams not wanting to trade for Daniel Jones at the end of the offseason, or at the end of the regular season, is not because of how he's played on the field. Because you see plenty of players get traded and it happening easy, who are not that great or that successful. The problem will be if they kept him till the end of the season in February and then tried to trade him then and find a partner. There would be teams that would be interested in Jones, but there would be a handful of teams that would not want to take on that contract and be very, very, very hard to get rid of that. Like, here's one example in 2022, or wait, was it 20? I think it was 2022, beginning of 2022. The Saints, right, middle of the season, just like this. This is week 12. I believe it was like week 15 or week 16 in the regular season. The Las Vegas Raiders, decided they were parting ways with Derek Carr. They would be moving on after the end of the season. Derek Carr at the time had a very big contract. What did the Raiders do in that situation? Kept him until the end of the season. They planned to try to trade for him. There were a lot of teams that were interested, including his current team, the New Orleans Saints. Lots of teams had interest in trading for Derek Carr because of, like, he had his struggles, but he still had some talent that teams would be interested to bring him in. But the problem was the contract he had. And that's a big reason why the Raiders couldn't find a trade partner, and they had to release him in February, and we saw the Saints sign him. And I think this would have been a problem for the New York Giants as well, to get rid of him via trade, and just by avoiding that process, you end up releasing him. And to be honest, not because of how bad he's played. I mean, that would have played a factor, but I think the bigger factor would have been his contract. I don't think the Giants would have been able to get much for Jones. At the most, a 6th-round pick. If Jones didn't have such a bad contract, I would say maybe the Giants could get a 5th-round pick for him. But with his terrible contract, it would have been a 6th or 7th-round pick. Nothing more for Daniel Jones. Now, where does he go is the big question. Where does he go after this? To be honest, there is a rival for the Giants who should be calling up Daniel Jones' phone number right now, but they won't. And their idiot owner has already said they're not going to do that. And I think you can guess the rival. It's definitely not going to be one of the division rivals that have two very talented quarterbacks in Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts. It's the other team, the Dallas Cowboys, who have a Dak Prescott who's out for the season, and Cooper Rush. Look, I think Cooper Rush is a solid quarterback. I watched the game as a Texans fan on Monday night, and look, he threw for a lot of yards, 354 yards. But if we're going to be honest, it was a blowout game, so a lot of that was, fourth quarter, we're down huge, getting a bunch of yardage. So he only had around, I think, 200 going into the fourth quarter. So sure, he made his good throws, but he also makes a bunch of mistakes. There was a couple fumbles by Rush. He threw an interception. He's thrown 2 interceptions in his first 2 starts. His first start against an actual good passing defense, no offense to my Houston Texans, against the Eagles only threw for, I believe it was, 45 passing yards. So look, I'm not gonna act like Daniel Jones is God or something, or he's the best talent ever, because he's not. He has a lot of his flaws too. But if you ask me, I think Daniel Jones is a way more talented quarterback than Cooper Rush. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. Look, both of them have the ability to make throws. Both of them can make really talented throws and be really, really nice throwing quarterbacks. But both of them also make their fair share of mistakes. Both throw a lot of interceptions. But here's the thing. Guess who throws less interceptions? It's Daniel Jones. Cooper Rush, in 2 starts against the Eagles and the Cowboys, has thrown 2 interceptions. Daniel Jones, in 10 starts, has thrown 7. So, meanwhile, Cooper Rush is averaging a pick per start, and he's throwing an interception every start, and Daniel Jones is only averaging 0.7 interceptions in a start. I know that's not a huge difference, but Cooper Rush, by the average, is throwing more interceptions than Daniel Jones. I know Jones has more, but Jones has way more starts than him. And another thing is, Jones, I think, has a lot of more more impressive talents. Like, he's a better. I think I'd say Jones is, in my opinion, I think a better passing quarterback too. I mean, Jones is averaging more passing yards per start in the season. Jones is averaging 207 passing yards per start, while Rush is averaging only 199. Now, again, that's not a big difference. But another thing to me is that it's not just Jones averaging more passing yards or Jones averaging less interceptions per start. Those are big things. But another big thing is Daniel Jones is a much more talented runner. Look at the Dallas Cowboys organization. They are one of the worst running football teams in the National Football League. The worst. And at least you can say with Dak Prescott, he has his flaws, but he's not that bad of a running quarterback. Or when he was younger, Dak was an amazing running quarterback. Now he's just a solid running quarterback. But a lot more talented as a runner than Cooper Rush is. Cooper Rush in 2 starts has 4 rushing yards. Daniel Jones is averaging over 17 rushing yards per game. Has 172 rushing yards in 10 starts. This Cowboys team that is fiddled with a bad running game, with Rico Dowdle, who has his solid games but has more of his non-solid games, and Zeke Elliott, who I'm sorry, I like Zeke Elliott, but he's just terrible at his age. With such a bad running game, probably the worst in football, you could add in a talented rushing quarterback who's averaging almost 20 rushing yards per game for a offense that averages one of the fewest amount of rushing yards per game in the National Football League, and you don't want to add in a talented rushing quarterback who's averaging almost 20 rushing yards per game while you have a quarterback under center right now who's only averaged 2 rushing yards per game. So I think Cooper Rush is okay. I think he's a solid quarterback. And I don't think Daniel Jones is much better than Cooper Rush, but I think he's better than Cooper Rush. And the Cowboys would definitely 100% be better off with Daniel Jones than Cooper Rush. And I don't think you're not going to have to pay too much to get Daniel Jones if you're the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know why they won't sign him. But Jerry Jones has already said, we're not adding anybody else. I'm not going to compare this to the Derrick Henry mistake that they made this offseason, because that was really bad. But this is another poor decision made by the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones not to sign someone right in front of them when they have the opportunity that's better than what they have. They pass on the opportunity to sign Derrick Henry and went to an old friend in Zeke Elliott, who's now been demoted as running back 1 and is absolutely garbage this year. That turned out to be a big, that turned out to work in their favor. And then they decided to go ahead and now they're deciding to keep Cooper Rush at quarterback, who's been terrible, instead of bringing Daniel Jones this year, who has been bad but has been much better than Cooper Rush, and not bring him in. So the Cowboys, it's frustrating. You have the opportunity to get better. You had it in the offseason with Derrick Henry. They declined that. Now you have it again mid-season with Daniel Jones, replace Cooper Rush. They don't want to do that either. What are your thoughts on Daniel Jones getting released in the comment section? And peace out.